seminar, a research seminar by the Centre for Social Impact. It's great to have you with us. Firstly, I would like to begin by acknowledging the Aboriginal people, the elders of the lands on which we are meeting today. For us, it's the land of the Whadjuk Noongar people. And I know that we represent people from all over the country. So if you'd like to put in chat where you are coming from and which elders and First Nations people you'd like to acknowledge, that would be great. And, especially during NAIDOC week, it's, really important to recognise the contribution of Aboriginal people to our lives in Australia. And I hope you're all finding a way to connect. Yesterday, I had the honour of being at an elders lunch and listening to stories from elders, which really packed a punch. And so, I hope we all have a chance to connect with that this week because, Australia needs to do some listening. So today, this seminar is really close to our hearts at CSI because we have actually been walking alongside the project that we're going to talk about. We have been the research and evaluation partners for over 3 years with the team who are doing this door knocking project called the ACDC Project. So we'll talk more about the project, of course. But yeah, so it's really great and a moment of celebration for us because many of us actually in this room today have been involved in all aspects of the research. Like from the beginning, Paul Flatow was involved, and then I don't know if Yasmin Hooper is here today. Oh yes, I can see her. So she's been a key part of the research from the beginning. Lily Salvo has been working long hours with me recently because we've got reports due. And there's Dr. Leanne Lester and David O'Shaughnessy, and actually everyone on the CSI team has probably been involved at some point with this project. So that's where we're at today. But importantly, I will also acknowledge there are ACDC people in the room. But I will hand over to Bill now, who is our presenter. So Bill, we have known for a long time because this basically was his idea. And I just firstly want to acknowledge the potential impact that you have made from having an idea and also making it happen. So that is something to be applauded. So Bill was the recent CEO of Community Mental Health Australia. He's recently finished up, but he's been there since 2018. And prior to that, he was the CEO of Astara Australia, which is, for people who don't know, Australia's largest mental health specialist employment services provider. He's been the General Manager of Recovery Services at Schizophrenia Fellowship of New South Wales, the CEO of Options Community Enterprises, and other roles in the community sector since 1978. So yes, I will hand over to Bill as the person who has initiated and led the ACDC project. He will explore the project from different elements, and we're hoping that sparks questions from you, curiosity. Like, this project has always sparked a lot of curiosity for me. So we will have question times at the end, or discussion time if it's just that you want to make a comment or bring in your experience. If you need clarification of anything in between, we'll be monitoring the chat. So Bill will be happy to respond to any questions you might have as we go. But other than that, save your questions for the last 20 or so minutes. And I will hand over to you, Bill, now.
Thank you, Lisette, and hello, everybody. And yes, I'm a recovering CEO at the moment, so it's important for me to point out that I'm not the CEO of CMHA. So what I'm saying is not to be regarded as representative of CMHA, but I've been involved with this project for a long time. and know it pretty well. And we made this appointment before I left, so I've kept it up. And but it's great to see so many people here, and some of the people in the ACDC team, and indeed our acting CEO for CMHA, Kathy's here as well too. So it's great that Kathy's here. So thanks, Kathy, for joining us as well too. And I will start off a PowerPoint in a moment and give acknowledgement to all the other team members as well too, because there's several here right now. But I'll first of all just make sure that the sharing part works. So let's just, fingers crossed.
Perfect.
That's good.
That's
Hang on a
great.
sec. It's now gone funny back again. Just going to go back to the sharing to make sure that sorry about this. Share again, because as David pointed out, I've got to make sure that I include sound right at the very beginning. And if you don't, it won't work. Always the technology is something or other that can confuse things. So we're there. Okay. So thanks for everybody for joining this. It's a very unusual and interesting project, and I hope that you have some questions and thoughts, critical questions, curious questions, questions of clarification. Very happy to take those, because I think this is a little bit outside the box, some of the aspects of this project, and we do need to explain why we've done the things we've done, and what the outcome has been, and what the potential future could be. So I also acknowledge country as well too. I'm on the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Some local people know it's a bit confusing. We've got the Gadigal people and the Gadigal people. In the Northern Beaches, it's the Gadigal people. I also, though, want to acknowledge the ACDC team. And my first apologies here is that I haven't got a picture of Julie in here. And I'll have to explain that, because I'm going to be in terrible trouble there. But this was a picture we did a while ago of some of the ACDC team. James, Ian, Hanina, myself, and Raymonda. Raymonda is staying on in the project, as is Ian as well too. And as I said before, Kathy's still involved. And Julie Millard is here on the project, and Julie provided an essential role right from the very beginning of the project, when I first came up with the notion, and we got the grant and moved forward in the design of it, and in many other aspects of the project as well too, including particularly the training as well. So the ACDC project, assisting communities through direct connection. We were very happy with the acronym there, in that if you have an acronym, it really helps if it's memorable, because the world is full of 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 letter acronyms. But this one, for obvious reasons, stuck, because it relates both to a rock and roll band and a great controversy in the history of electricity. We also started the project around about the same time as COVID hit, and that was both an asset and a liability. On the one hand, going door to door to households during a pandemic might not seem to be the brightest of ideas, but in a way it actually worked quite well. We didn't go to communities when they were in sort of lockdown, and when there was a significant outbreak in a particular communities, but we're able to curate where we went, and it worked quite well for us, in that it kind of made sense to people that somebody knocked on their door and was just doing a kind of well-being check. So hi, we're from ACDC, and there's 2 people there, and we're just checking to see how you're going. And also the wellness delivered worked well, because at that stage people were getting food and other parcels delivered. So we slotted in to that frame of reference, that template, as we went across the country. Now, we've actually, it says over 26 sites. It definitely, it's 27 or 28 sites, depending upon how you count them. And the details, and I'll mention this a couple of times, can be found on the ACDC website, which is listed below easy one to remember, acdc.org.au. We have lots and lots of photos of different communities and the people connectors, etc. And I'd love to do a photo display of those one day. And I want to thank Ray and Raymonda particularly for being the curator of our photography collection. And each of the communities we went to was very unique. And this is just one that we went to more recently in round 3 up in Queensland, just to give you a flavour of what it was, what they're like. We had cut the project up into 4 rounds. There was really, it's 5. There was an initial development and piloting stage from March 2020 right through to December. That's where we went out there to several sites, and that's where the team did it themselves. So we had to get a sense of what it was like to go out door to door with a survey in its early stages, and just sort of discover the risks and then work out a process for how we would manage those. How you engage with people to not get turned away from the door too quickly, and a number of other components of the activity, which we gradually evolved into a very comprehensive training course that I'll talk about a little while later. Then we ran round 1, round 2, round 3, and we're just about to begin round 4, because the great news here is that the ACDC project continues on at least for another year, and both Kathy and Ray will be part of that project. So if there's any questions about how that's going, it's great that Ray and Kathy are here, and their contact details will be available at the end. I know academics like their details and their reports, and this project has a lot of data and details. The reports for round 1 and round 2 are downloadable from the website there, and there was 3 reports: the evaluation report, the research report on the right-hand side, and in the middle was the summary report. And the round 3 summary report is coming out very soon. And again, the great work of Lisette and Yasmin and Lily on that, and others as well too. And we're really looking forward to that.
Bill, can I interrupt just there?
Yep.
When you say very soon, I think Lily's going to give everyone the link at the end of the webinar, so you'll get it hot off the press.
That's very soon then. That's great. No, thanks, Lisette. Thanks, Lily. I will, just in case I forget to mention it later, the data from this project, as we agreed when we did the original tender, will be in the finals, when the project complete, available through the Australian Data Archives, because the opportunities for researchers to find all sorts of interesting findings in there are extensive, and we want to make sure that's available on the Commons after we've done the appropriate cleaning up and organizing of the data. But we might mention that again towards the end. There's been a large media coverage of this project. This is literally only about sort of 10% of the coverage there. I do have a list a little bit later on, which I've tried to turn into a rolling credit with some degree of success in PowerPoint. But because it's an unusual project going door to door, we've got a lot of local coverage and also some national coverage, and in both TV, radio, and newspapers, and some other online large social media local podcasters, etc. We've done 3 short videos, and I'm going to show one of them next, just to give you a flavor of the project. They're also available on our website. Arguably, I should show the project overview one first, but I'm not. We're going to show the last one, the community partners, because it gives a really good sense of the flavor, particularly of its embeddedness in cold communities and other communities, other diverse communities. So I wanted to show that. we had originally talked about a couple of other videos. At the very least, I'm hoping that we go ahead at least with one of the plans, which is the video from the householder's perspective. So you can see what this project's been like from their perspectives, which I think would be great to get, but we'll see how we go, and out of my hands now. All right, now just now waiting to see whether I can get control back of the PowerPoint here to go to the next slide. Here we go. Good. Okay. Again, I'm just going to start to play this, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that it actually works. The findings from the ACDC project have been really, really interesting. Not only have we tested and piloted the proactive outreach project, we found that the level of distress and mental health issues is very wide, varying from different communities across the country. So organisations can really benefit from that proactive outreach approach, because it allows them to access people that would really benefit from their particular services, but who they won't connect to unless they've got a proactive outreach approach as part of their service delivery.
They're actually going out there, they're knocking on doors, they're telling people about us, and they're increasing the mental health literacy in our community, which is, absolutely a great thing for us.
So it was a great partnership to work with one of the peak bodies, and I think it's really important to have that collaboration and partnership. They have a lot of expertise in that area, and we wanted to leverage off their resources and support.
In terms of how the community benefited from the ACDC project, it's largely around increasing accessibility. And very much about normalising mental health support seeking.
Because a lot of the community did not know themselves about the local services that were provided.
The ACDC project played an important role in reducing the stigma and shame associated with seeking support around mental health services.
It was a good opportunity for us as well to introduce our programs to them.
Hopefully, at this point in time, the community is a little bit more aware that they can seek support before there is a big explosion of symptoms. It's maybe about getting that early intervention.
Organisations, particularly those working in the mental health sphere, need to move upstream to where people are being pushed into the river, not waiting downstream to pull them out of the river when they're struggling and drowning.
We support delivery partner organisations to really get an understanding of the service landscape in their communities.
We were surprised as an organisation about how many local services there are within Dandenong around supporting people with their health and wellbeing and their mental health as well.
It improves referral pathways, and also it leads to sector collaboration where services are talking to each other and really improving community outcomes.
Well, one of the organisational benefits of the ACDC project is it's wonderful training for your staff.
Our staff, they feel empowered because they've, through professional development and the training that they got through ACDC, they're now equipped with new skills to support the community. And now post the ACDC project, they're like, wow, I've become a better person because of this project. And we still have that continued partnership, even post the project, which is great. It's still adding value to our organisation.
The project ACDC is funded by the Department of Social Services, part of their ILC, the Information Linkages and Capacity Building Project, which has made it possible to roll this project out right across Australia in regional, rural and metro Australia and every state and territory.
In general, it was quite a positive initiative. I'm hoping that this project can continue in the future.
So I would definitely encourage other organisations to partner with CMHA.
It's ultimately going to help all the services in the local area. It's going to mean that people are more aware of how to seek support appropriately. It's going to mean that there's more connection happening amongst service providers. Ultimately, what that means is that people know more about mental health, there's less stigma in the community, and then they're able to support seek as soon as they are able to identify a concern. And we know that the burden of mental health is very significant, so the longer you leave it unchecked, the more it costs everybody.
Great. And I hope that came through okay there in terms of the audio and the video. That particular video was one that focused on the perspective of the delivery partner organizations. The other videos focus on the perspective of the people connectors, and the first one is a little bit of an overview. And I'm also, while I was watching that, I was thinking that there are people here who have not heard of this project at all who are here today. And while it'll become clearer what we did as we go through, I just wanted to sort of say it simply at this particular stage. What we're doing and what we've done here is go door to door to every household in communities across Australia, selected communities across Australia there. Of course, not everybody's at home, and we can give you if you're wanting to start a life of crime, we can tell you what the proportion is of people who are home. But generally, when people are home, they'll answer the door. People are either too busy and haven't got time, but a significant number, and the majority of people, are willing at least to have a conversation and connect. And I'll give you those numbers a little bit later there. So we then engage in a conversation, we provide information, and in a number of cases, we undertake a survey. In some cases, we'll find people are in a situation of need that they've agreed that we could provide some support and follow-up for. That wasn't the main focus of the project, but we still did that, and did a little bit more of that in round 3. And that has been very useful, but also helped us identify where the gaps are as well too. So the overall structure here is that, as you can see here, and I'll see whether I can find a way of showing a little marker here. But the first stage there is the one of stakeholder engagement. So after a community has actually been chosen, the stakeholder engagement stage is one that we begin in advance, at least a month, sometimes 2 months in advance of starting the project at a particular site. And that's one of identifying what are some of the local supports and local services that we can put into our information packs, and also just to contact them and connect to see whether they're available, whether they've got a wait list, what the process is for a referral. And it was one of the remarkable findings of the project that when you get into the weeds at a local site, there are so many small scale community activities that are there that you can connect people to. It might not be the solution to all their problems, but certainly it's great in terms of being able to connect people who are isolated with activities in their local community and with meaningful activity in their local community. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The next stage there, if you can see in the column in the middle, was the training. There was a process, I should say even before that, an EOI process, an expression of interest process that we went through that was national and well applied for, where we had to literally create a short list of organizations that wanted to partner with us in the project there. And the criteria that we'd actually set were ones that various organizations applied to. So that's how the process of determining where we did the project was carried out. So once the site was chosen, the delivery partner was chosen, the stakeholder engagement process was begun in the local area. Then the training and support began with the people connectors and the delivery partner organization. And that's one of the legacies of this project as well too, will be the training course that, as I mentioned, the ACDC team and particularly Julie helped us fine tune and developed. And that and the operational guide are useful products that will be part of the output of this great project. Then following that is the proactive outreach stage. And as I mentioned, you've got the conversation, the information products. One of the findings in the information products that was well attested by the follow-ups is that the fridge magnet was a real winner. People get stuff in the mail all the time, but if it's just a bit of paper and a brochure, it ends up in the bin pretty quick, and or it's on a pile on the coffee table there, and then sort of gets ignored, and then eventually thrown out when you're doing a cleanup 6 months later. But a fridge magnet stays on the fridge and can be there for. I know we've got one in our fridge at home there. It's been there for several years, and arguably some of the information, some of the sites or some of the services may disappear. That's one of the problems with it. But generally, we've chosen services that are there for the long haul, and that's a useful bit of information for people to have. The survey, I'll talk about more upon that later, and then the connecting to supports. Finally, once that was done and a site was completed, then we were able to disseminate the findings to local key stakeholders there. And each one of the sites that we visited had a community report that was just for that community that gave the top level data and some of the highlights, positives and the negatives in the sense of the gaps and where the needs were. And that became very useful, and that often led to some media coverage once that had actually been released. And that's something other too that, again, people in the team, both CSI and the ACDC team were very involved in developing and promulgating. So the overall data for round 1, round 2, and round 3, 28 communities engaged, but although 27 communities commenced door knocking. Won't explain the difference there. That's a long story. 52,594 doors knocked and 9,287 conversations. The engagement data for round 2 and 3, when people knocked, 36% of doors were open. I said I wasn't going to say that, but that's an average. It did vary from community to community, but that's broadly. So it means a bit more than a third of people are at home at any one time. And of those that answered the door, a bit less than 50% are willing to have a conversation. Others are just going off to do the shopping or pick up the kids, or they're doing a Zoom meeting, or they haven't got time for some other reason. But about half of the people, that was pretty good. And that really was because we developed the techniques within the first few seconds for engaging with people with our zero agenda approach. One of our opening remarks, although people varied it, was don't worry, we're not trying to sell anything, and we're not from a religious organization, and nor are we trying to get your vote. People relaxed a little bit when you said that, and particularly then we followed up with a bit of a brief explanation of why we're there. And the surveys, just shy of 5,000 surveys, so a very large data set is very useful. In terms of project outcomes that we've found from the follow-up that have been done, where people have agreed to and signed a form to be agreed to consent to the follow-up, 78% of people put the fridge magnet on their fridge, which is pretty good. It's not the case that we leave the door and suddenly everything goes in the bin straight away. 83% of the people read the information. 59% of people talked with a family member or friend about their own mental health and well-being as a result of the visit. The destigmatization component of this is very important, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. As a result of the visit, 31% of people contacted a professional, a service, or a community organization to ask about their support. 24% of people were, in addition to that, were planning to do so. So it's more than 50% together. And a result of the visit, 20% of people had contacted a professional to ask about support for someone else's mental health. So in other words, it wasn't just focused on the householder's need, but sometimes for people who are either in the household or somebody else they were caring for. The findings in relation to carers and the number of people who are out there in caring roles will be of no surprise to people that work in that area, but they're very significant and something other that we hope to focus a little bit more on in the future. So the review of the project has two components. One is the evaluation component to understand the value of door knocking as a proactive outreach method. We named it proactive outreach, for supporting the mental health in communities and for individuals. And the research purpose was to explore the survey results and what they indicate about mental health needs in communities and individuals. So these findings here are headlines from the report that Lily will put the link to in the chat shortly. But the first finding was that the door knocking approach identified many people with poor well-being or a significant mental health. And below is just a quick grab of the results from the K10. Now, many of the questions and the tools that we used that were controversial. The K10 we chose particularly because it allows us to compare this data with that from ABS and other both national and international surveys on mental health. The data here in terms of the scores on K10, where you've got 8.4% very high and 13% on high, meaning that you've got 21.4% of people in that high or very high. Those are numbers that are higher than the ABS wellbeing survey, and if you add it in the moderate, considerably more so. There's a lot of psychological distress out there in community, and particularly with, I guess, the people who are at home. That's not to say that the sample was particularly slanted. We were able to get a sense of what proportion of people who are working, and were able to work out, for example, whether or not what impact being unemployed or being employed or unemployed had upon these scores. But just going quickly through the other research findings there, the extent to which people were accessing services varied widely across demographics and communities. And I won't go through the data there, but go a bit more quickly now through this because time marches on, I can see. Research finding 3 people with mental health needs often face several compounding challenges which directly impacted on their well-being. So these are particularly the social determinants. And we asked questions both about what people thought were the issues in their community and for them as individuals. In terms of individuals, these were some of the results. So overall, nationally, the number one issue was financial stress when you're averaged across round 2 and 3, or round 1, 2, and 3. COVID-19 pandemic still up there quite high, but that's because during the COVID pandemic, it was number 1. And then as we did the project last year, it tended to fade insignificant, but overall the average is still high. Housing, no surprise there, big issue for many, many people. Concerns about climate change. This one did surprise us in that we thought maybe this might be lagging, and indeed we had to argue whether to put this onto the list, but it's out there, and it's part of the background angst that people have about their circumstances, then the life and the things that worry them and cause them some degrees of concern, anxiety, depression, etc. Physical health issues, unemployment, social isolation or loneliness, also very important, and we have a great paper coming out on that, particularly on the impact of loneliness and isolation, which are different things, and working together with Dr. Michelle Lim on the production of that paper, which will come out in the not too distant future. This is page 2 of 2, and I won't read through those, but all those again. So the correlation between the social determinants, I'll just go back to that to make this point. The correlation between the social determinants and people's scores on the K10 and the WHO5 and the other mental health questions was really, really high. And I will mention that later on. But for people looking for data to verify the significance and importance of social determinants and its impact on mental health, the ACDC project gives really strong, very highly significant correlations on that association. So people with disability had a significantly higher psychological distress and higher loneliness. Again, it's hidden in the data there. interesting point, but I'll pass on. And I'll go quickly now to the 4 evaluation findings. So fortunately, we found householders were very responsive to informal conversations about mental health and welcomed the opportunity to receive information. Now, you might think that when somebody comes at the door there, that a lot of people who did this thought, oh, you're going to get a lot of bugger offs or worse language than that when people are actually at the door. But actually, it's very, very rare. As one of the people connectors famously said, one of the great discoveries for me was people are a lot nicer than I thought they were. And particularly if you watch TV too much, you can get the sense that people are horrible and nasty and cynical and selfish there. But really, a lot of people are very, very, very welcoming, particularly in a face-to-face context. And also people are very pleased to have somebody other to come to their place just to talk about them and their well-being without any agenda to sell them or convert them or change them or get them to do anything, but really just to find out about them and to check in. So that was really interesting. The one-off visits with, in some cases, short-term follow-up contacts resulted in tangible outcomes for many householders. Again, the data regarding that is in the summary report. Householders sought support for more immediate issues to help address their mental health and well-being. Again, the information there in the report will explain why that is so. Evaluation finding 4. Addressing the more complex support needs of householders in high-risk circumstances was challenging, but through their dedicated efforts, people connectors were able to provide assistance. So there are some great stories, and we've in part of the research methods, and I should have mentioned at the beginning that it's a mixed method, a mixture of methods were applied here. One of the methods was the collection of stories in a couple of different ways and looking for the most significant change stories. And then amongst those, there are some examples of very complex situations where we were able to get an outcome, even though this was not the primary intent of the project, in a short amount of time and with minimal resources. But it also helped us map where the gaps are and what extra would be needed if you were to try to address those more complex needs. Evaluation finding 5. Certain household cohorts were particularly responsive and appreciative of the door knocking visit. I'll just leave that with you. And I think in part too, that does overlap with the finding that when we went to the trouble of in translating the materials into several languages, particularly the languages of high prevalent cold communities, in cold communities where there was a particular high prevalence of a particular group there, and we translated the materials into those groups, and we did that 3 or 4 or 5 times, and also engaged people connectors who were from those communities who could also speak those languages themselves. And we went to people's doors and presented them with, spoke in their language, presented them with information in the primary language that they speak at home that they were comfortable with. That was really appreciated, and people really loved that. And I think that was there's some wonderful stories there, and that does feature a little bit in the second and the first video as well too. The proactive outreach aspect of door knocking was largely helpful, but as I said before, particularly for culturally and social conditions. Oh, no, this is slightly different. We found that in some situations there, we had difficulties and had to, on the fly, adjust and alter the project there. And so that's something that we've caught. And it's an interesting finding that if the project continues on, that we will speak on a little bit more. In the final report, there is an addendum that will be there about how the project had to be adapted in a a high Indigenous, a community that had a high number of Indigenous people there, and that report's actually done by the community, by those Indigenous people and the delivery partner that was involved in that project. So again, do check that out. A few other findings. I'll jump through these, and then we'll get to some questions. Hopefully, the correlation between psychological distress and social determinants, as I said, was very high. This is just one of those. So, for example, the relationship between loneliness, and we used a standard measure on that, and psychological distress. If you can see that right now, the loneliness scores on I think on your left, assuming the screen's doing the right thing, and the K10 scores very, very clear. People with expressed mental health needs often do not access social and mental health support services. So this is another set of findings where we ask people about whether or not they'd actually sought support previously. If not, why not? And that data is helpful, particularly for local planners at the local level, but also too for national planners to know where some of the gaps are. Either the services don't exist, and or there are personal or social service barriers, such as I prefer to manage myself, I was afraid, embarrassed, ashamed to ask. A lot of those, particularly those top two, is a lot to do with the issue around stigma and shame, and the reason that most people just don't seek help. They want to tough it out themselves, which is a way to go sometimes, but also too, it means that you have people suffering in silence until something becomes a crisis, and then you've got a real problem. Local data is really interesting in that it demonstrated considerable variability from site to site, and that just gives you a flavor of some of those differences there. For example, affordability is a barrier for 14% in the Macedon Ranges, but 41% in Toowoomba. Stigma ranged from 3% in Macedon Ranges and 57% in Burnie. A few other findings. As I said before, there's a largely hidden landscape of micro-community activities and groups that can provide channels for social connection and activity. So while we wait for the Commonwealth Government and other governments to try and fill in the gaps, particularly for psychosocial support, which we're still hoping to happen and which needs to happen, it's also the case that we should work a little bit more at a grassroots level from the ground up to try to encourage, support, and give local communities the resources and the incentive to try to engage with people within their own community to create more mentally healthy communities. Big question, and something other that I'd love to explore a little bit more and hope to do so. For many people with significant unmet needs, checking in with them at their homes is the only effective way of connecting. So this is probably the unique aspect of ACDC. It really, the data, the collection of data, the service mapping, etc. Yep, that was good, but other people have done that. But what was unique here was this checking in. You can put posters up at the local supermarket. You can put brochures in the doctor's office. You can try all sorts of ways on social media and portals there. But there's just a large percentage of the population that you won't get to through those methods. But going out to the people in community there, to their homes, is the only effective way of connecting with those particular people. And as somebody, one of the leaders in the DPO said, talking about somebody or other, was imagine not leaving your house for 2 years and then someone comes to your door and inspires you to get out of that social isolation. And there was a story behind that, just as an example. Single door knocking, another finding. Single door knocking conversation can be personally impactful. This is something or other that particularly CSI's follow-up revealed to us that we're even a little bit surprised about. But even just it's kind of like what they call a short intervention, which can be very efficacious. And even though months had passed by, since people had spoken to the People Connectors, they had a really positive experience, and it had made a real difference. Getting towards the end now, and I can see the time flying by, and let's probably get a bit nervous if we've not. But do start to think of questions here while I do the run up here. As I've said, the proactive outreach approach is really important, but it would be really easy to bugger this up. pardon the French. It could be done really clumsily and could give proactive outreach a bad name if it's not, if it doesn't apply, if you don't apply certain safety and quality standards. And so we're kind of hopeful that it doesn't take off and people do it in a clumsy way, and therefore pretty soon you get a cynicism out there in the community. Oh yes, another person coming to the door to do something. I think it's really important that it's done in a curated way, and that the quality of the connection is really important. It needs to be something or other where you create a situation of trust, where it's a safe space, and where the focus particularly is on listening and not telling. The holistic no agenda approach was really important there. So as I said a couple of times there, people are really sensitive to whether or not you've got an agenda when you're at the door. People are thinking in the back of their mind, what's this person want? Why are they here? And if you come to that situation and you have got some sort of agenda, people will pick it up pretty quickly and dismiss you. But really, what you're there for is really just to listen, to check in, and maybe provide people with information if they want it, and maybe provide people with some connection if they want it. And again, it's a matter of being flexible too. Some people were willing, and some people were not. And adapting to that situation and adapting to each individual's unique barriers to help them find the help was also pretty important. Again, the training is important there, and the capacity of the people connectors and their knowledge, which grew particularly during the project, is a key success factor. Now, there was quite a lot of media coverage, as I said before. Oh, this is actually working. This is my attempt at the at using PowerPoint to scroll. Each of these is a radio interview and/or story on the project here. So we've got great local coverage there, and people do find it really interesting and unique that there's somebody out in their community. The SAID team, again, apologies to Julie, she's not there. The website is acdc.org.au, which is ACDC is a project of Community Mental Health Australia there. It's funded by the Department of Social Services. The contact, particularly going forward for this particular round now, is Raimonda, and although CMHA more generally. My contact details are there at the bottom there. And let's see if now we can get out of this. And stop sharing. Okay, well, I think that leaves about 10 minutes or so to go. Unless that, I'll flip back over to you and see whether anybody's either put up their hands or anything's gone into the chat for questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Bill. That was wonderful. And I know how challenging it is after, when you know so much, and there's also the research and the evaluation and so much to cover. We've learnt so much. So thank you for attempting that. I definitely didn't want to. So that was great. We have a question from Julie. Would you like to? I know Julie probably will be happy to speak, and she's not normally shy. So.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Lisette and Bill, and hi, everyone. So the Julie that Bill's been talking about is me. So I wanted to just reiterate the fact that what Bill was saying about it's a process, and it's quite an extensive training and then ongoing support when you're having just 2 people door knocking in a suburb. In some cases, we had 3 people, and they could change it up a bit. But you have to look at risk management processes. You have to look at safety. You want to make sure that everyone is safe when they're door knocking. And so therefore the training has to be comprehensive, but it also has to take into account things like, how do you build rapport quickly at the door? What's motivational interviewing? How to do safe door knocking processes, and how to manage incidents, or somebody who comes to the door angrily or upset, or so there's a great deal that goes into it. But then the project we were able to offer ongoing support. So we would have a community of practice that would meet each fortnight initially and then each month to make sure that everyone felt safe, but also connected with the project and also connected with the other sites around Australia who were also door knocking at the time. So then they had the opportunity to bring a problem to the table and then discuss it. So how did you guys deal with that? Oh, we had one of those as well. Wow, what did you do? But also too, we heard about snakes, had to avoid snakes. We heard about avoiding crocodiles in water. We heard about large locked gates. We heard about dogs, so the training grew and grew over the years to encompass safety as the key message for everybody. Thanks.
No, great points, Julie. And I think, yes, those safety protocols were pretty important. It definitely, note to self, avoid houses that have a pet crocodile, amongst other things. But the training, I think, too, is something other that, and the project itself was a great experience for a lot of the people connectors. And a number have said that really it should be part of everybody's introduction to social work and psychosocial support out there in the community, because rather than just being at a nice center and people come and knock on your door and visit you with appointments there, getting out into the community is something other that takes a little bit of bravery and a little bit of encouragement, but it was a great way for people to develop their skills. My own view on this is that while this was a relatively large project, and you might go, well, oh my God, how on earth could you get to every household in Australia there? Well, it actually is scalable up. If you do the numbers on this in terms of a decent psychosocial support outside the NDIS, my own numbers on this, if you've got for example, teams of 5 people, that it only takes one person in 1,000 teams, which is what we need across Australia, to do that. And in 2.5 years, you've been to every household in Australia, if you do the numbers on that. So it is a project that's scalable up to be able to connect out there. And I think it'll be a great way of developing people's skills through that training process, as well as destigmatization, as well as particularly contacting a lot of people who otherwise are not going to get connected with. They're just stuck there in isolation. They're at home, and that's one of the key outcomes of this project. Lisette, any other questions in the chat there?
There sure is. Mary Jane Rigby. So Mary, I don't know if you feel comfortable talking to your question. We've got some great questions that sort of build off what Julie was talking about as well.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm in WA, working with the City of Rockingham, and I'm only just learning about the ACDC project. So, Bill, thanks for your presentation. It was wonderful, and it's quite inspiring. We've literally just finished doing a community measure of loneliness within our city. So some of those results speak very loudly to some of the data that you've just shared. I guess some of the questions that I'm keen to learn a bit more on, particularly is around the safety of the door knockers and the connectors, which Julie has touched on. Yep. But more so, were they paid or volunteers?
They were paid, and we tried to make sure they were paid at a good, the highest level we could try to get in the SCADS award there. It wasn't. The recruitment process was challenging in some areas, particularly in rural and regional Australia. And the safety protocols, very briefly, as Julie mentioned, we'd spent a long time getting those right. So we even had right from the very beginning, being able to, prior to go there, we would often check in with the police department sometimes to find out if there were certain neighborhoods not to go to in some places there. We had ways of identifying houses where there was a few signs that would say, no, don't go there. And so that was the case. We had always people went in pairs. I know it's a bit cliche-ish, but we had male and female, what tended to be the kind of the best combination for all sorts of reasons. And we also had a team leader that was aware of where people were at all times. We had the identification badges there. People had the mobile phones and a iPad as well too that was Wi-Fi connected at the time, at any one time. And yeah, there's some other details there, but yeah, the safety protocols was important there. But knock on wood, we had very few incidents, even though we've been to many tens of thousands of homes. So
That's great.
The flip side is that it was very good. There are some communities we needed to be a bit more cautious than others, and it's that's obviously newsworthy right now in terms of some communities where they've got some challenges and issues.
Yeah, Lizette, I'm just conscious that I've got quite a few questions and I don't want to take the whole floor. So would it be best if I just send those through, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, feel free to stay in touch. I guess it might be with Ramonda or CSI. We can give you so my contact details and Ramonda's as well, or maybe we could have a follow-up chat if you want to.
Would be great. I guess one of the probably most important ones right now is there current new funding available for additional communities to look at exploring this project?
Well, I won't speak to that because that's something other that's being worked out right now. But although I can say yes, we have the extension of funding for 2024 there, but how that goes is being worked out, and something other I'll leave to the others to discuss.
No worries. And maybe just one, if I could, how are the communities identified?
Well, that's a great question. So we had first of all an expression in the second round. We had an expression and the first round we had expressions of interest where we detailed what we were looking for. There was a bit of a intended focus. So in other words, the criteria, if you were in a regional or rural area, you would score higher in the criteria. And we sent those out through several channels, particularly through all the state peaks. Went out there, so it was widely broadcast. And so I can't remember the numbers for the first round, but I think the second round we had at least 50 applications for about, Ramonda will remember, for about 15 spaces, I think it was thereabouts. And so there it was the criteria, and it was the people's capacity to be able to recruit people connectors fairly quickly. It was organizations embeddedness in community there. So we've got that, and again, that's something that can be part of the legacy. Part of the intended legacy of this project is what we've called ACDC in a box, that literally has the answers to all these questions, including the training course. That's the intent. We'll see whether or not we get to there at the end of this this project, assuming there's not a further extension, which is always possible as well too.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. And I've put my email there. And again, if anyone else on the call has questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can direct you to other people. So yeah, we're at 2:00 now. Thank you so much, Bill. That was really great to hear from you. I'm sure, that's not the last we hear from you as well, Bill. And now that you have all this knowledge, I hope you find other ways to apply the learnings. And I think there's also more learning to do about door knocking. It's largely untested in Australia. So this was our first attempt to find out if it works, how it works, and what the value is. So feel free to thanks Lily for putting the links to the reports in the chat. Feel free to have a read and then reach out to us again if you've got further questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you, Lisette. Thank you, everybody. Great to have this opportunity.